Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to present to you our golf course renovation plan for 2022. I know that we have had a long period of time here that we've been trying to figure out some of the logistics of our permitting. Got some great information for you on that today, as well as our very special guest, Billy Fuller, that'll come on in a little bit and talk through the changes on the 5 holes that we'll be renovating this year. You're seeing the picture of number 11 in the form that Billy had created it on a rendering back almost 2 years ago now. And as we get into the presentation, Billy will spend some time talking about his philosophy on number 11 and why he made some of those changes. For those of you that have not been a part of this process all along, either joined recently or joined last year, I want to give a quick review of how we got here today. Summer of 2019, we had a lot of issues on our greens that created us a situation that we brought in some experts, really looked at what was causing those issues that we've had for many, many years in some form or fashion. And we decided that our best opportunity was to do a full renovation of about 5 or 6 greens that suffered a lot during the summertime. At that time, we also made the determination to convert to Bermuda grass, to a TifEagle Bermuda that you see now on the majority of the greens out there. At that point, we decided rather than just converting over to Bermuda, fixing those greens in terms of the agronomic issues, we made the determination that we should bring in a design expert, an architect, to make design changes to a lot of the greens that sit up, have a really difficult green complexes, those plateaued greens like 11 used to be, as you see existing on number 3 and on 4, the other holes down the Floodway. And we made the decision to retain Billy Fuller as our golf course architect. In a moment, I'll introduce many of the great things that Billy has done and why we chose him. We reached a point in April of 2020. COVID was in full bloom at that point. We were really struggling to figure out what was going to happen in the world. And we were starting to get into some really significant complexities with our permitting. And rather than renovate in 2020, we decided to wait until 2021, which we're really glad we did, because obviously golf became sort of a bastion of hope for everybody in terms of a place to come and enjoy their lives versus sitting at home during the COVID outbreak. Got to December 2020, introduced that we were going to have to break this plan into 2. And then we started the first phase in spring and summer of 2021, completing it in September of 21. The reason we had a lot of changes over the last 2 years was due to permitting. We're in a very unique situation here with the holes that sit along the Harpeth River. They sit in both a floodplain as well as a floodway. So the floodplain are the holes that exist into an area that almost wraps all the way up to number 6 green, number 11, number 12 are all in the floodplain. And those holes are regulated by the city. So when we went to make changes on 11 and 6, we had to get what's called a no rise, which means that we were not creating any additional storage issues in the floodplain. The holes on 3, 4, 14, 15, and 16 actually sit in the floodway, which is permitted, regulated by FEMA. And that's because those are the areas of the river shorelines that flood significantly. And we even saw that about a week and a half ago when we had a lot of that rain. A lot of those holes were underwater, as you saw from some of the pictures we sent. You can see these holes here are the ones that are in the floodway. Holes number 3, 4, 14 green, all of 15 and all of 16 sit in that floodway. We started the permitting process way back in December of 19, and we determined in about February of 2020 that we were going to have to go through what's called a CLOMR because of the floodway. We started the process in 2020, the pandemic hit, decided to punt any of the renovations all the way into 2021. And at that point, decided that we had to progress to this CLOMR, which is a conditional letter of map revision. Rather than permitting, we're actually changing the federally regulated flood maps. Summer of 2020, we started the data process and figured out that there were some significant issues with the way that the floodway in our area was originally created. So our engineers had to go through a months-long process to bring that up to the current data points that we're at today. Fall of 2020, we readied our submissions for FEMA and started to work through a public notification process. The public notification process lasted all the way through January and into February of last year due to some regulation changes that the city asked us to do. That is why we chose to split it into 2 phases, because we knew at that point we could not get those holes done last year, but that we should be able to get them completed this year. March of 21, we did a virtual public notification meeting, so about a year ago now. And then we were waiting for city approval to move forward with the submission to FEMA. In May of 2021, we submitted to FEMA. They had 90 days to respond. They responded on about the 87th day with comments. We responded back in late May into June. And then that progressed all the way through now, essentially with a comment period back and forth. FEMA waited another close to 80 days to respond to our initial submissions. And then we got into the winter time and finally got to the point where we are right now, which is waiting final approval. Now, the good news of all this is all of the city permitting was done last year in approvals. So to get the final grading permits for the city, we just have to have the CLOMR complete. Our engineers are working with FEMA daily right now to get that completed. We have gone to final approval position, and we feel very confident that we're going to get that CLOMR. It's just a question of when. So that really creates three scenarios for us. The first scenario is that we get the CLOMR really in the next few days here. That'll allow us to go to the city meeting on March 16th and then get approvals from them. Pending those approvals, we should be able to start as of April 1st. If we miss that date, it pushes us to a April 6th meeting with the city. So as long as we get the CLOMR between March 15th and April 1st, we'll be able to move to the city meeting on April 6th and then begin work shortly after then. If the CLOMR is received or we still haven't had word by April 1st, then we'll have some decisions to make. We'll either make a decision to start construction in late April or actually push to 2023. That's all going to revolve around how quickly we feel like we'll be able to get the greens sprigged. Our goal, as you'll see here in a second, is to have the greens sprigged as of mid-June and allow a full 8 to 10 week grow in so that we don't run into, which we did this year, which were greens not completely grown in before they went dormant. Once we get started, we have two staging areas, just like we did last year, but for our new members, I wanted to show this. All of the sand and gravel will go in the middle parking lot. You'll see that on the right-hand side of the screen. And then the left side will be where NMP, which is our construction group, will be staged, is right up next to 14T. And then they'll go right down 14 Fairway into the area of the floodway. So phase 2 does have some additional scopes of work and some timelines to share with you. So again, assuming we get permits by April 1st, we'll begin earthwork and shaping of those green complexes on 3, 4, 14, 15, and 16, sometime in April through early June. We'll sprig those greens in mid-June to early June, and then hopefully be opened back up by late August into early September. Now, we have additionally decided to do some pond work. The pond that sits between 2 and 17 does have a pretty significant leak in it. Chris has to keep water running pretty often, or even actually continuously, to keep that pond at full pool. So we're going to drain that pond down, smooth out the base, and line the pond between 2 and 17. So that work will take place in the middle of the summer so that it doesn't really impact your golf experience once we get back open. Practice tee and the short game areas will be open the full period of time. And then Chris Coffin has created a very unique, what we're calling a 6-6 situation. So it's an 18-hole routing using no temporary greens. We'll have 6 holes available on the front, which will be 1, 2, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then on the back, we'll have 10, 11, 12, 13, 17, and 18. We'll play 17 as a par 3 during the construction process, and then extend back to the full par 5 length once we're down to just sprigging greens. So you'll play a scenario where if you start on the front, you'll play those 6 holes. You'll go to the back, play those 6 holes, and then loop back to the front to finish those 6 holes again. So you'll play a full 18, but you'll actually play the same 6 twice. And if you start on the back, you'll play back, front, back. We'll have a lot more information out for you on the way that process works, how you'll get tee times here in the coming weeks once we do have approvals. But please do understand that it is our intent that you'll play 18 actual greens versus having to play any temporary greens at all. And we'll be able to play almost as many rounds a day as we do typically. We will have a full tournament schedule that Chris will release once we're sure that we'll get started on time. That'll include the par 3 tournament, the alternate shot. We'll obviously play a modified golf course during that period, but we're excited that we'll be able to play tournaments all the way through. And obviously, construction is paramount to everything. Weather delays, all of that's going to be contingent for our opening dates, things like that. But we do have a really strong confidence that this plan is going to work well and you'll be able to enjoy a really great golf experience all the way through this summer. So this time I'd like to bring in Billy Fuller. So Billy is our golf course architect. I've known Billy for, gosh, probably close to 15, 16 years now. Billy was our consultant at Reynolds Plantation when I worked there. But besides consulting and being one of the top agronomic experts in the country, a long time ago, Billy got into the design world. Billy started as the as the golf course superintendent at Augusta National back in the 80s, was at Kiowa Island and opened the ocean course there as the director of agronomy, and then joined Bob Cup Design for nearly 20 years, was involved with the building and the design of Vanderbilt Legends Club, Liberty National, and then Billy broke out on his own in 2005 and has done well over 20 renovations, redesigns, and some of his own original designs as well. And really the reason Billy was chosen was because A, I had a great relationship with him and I knew that him as a known quantity. B, his agronomic expertise are really unmatched in the country. So I knew that he was going to be able to give some great insight on some of the issues we're having. And then C, his design work really tied in, I think, well with what we already had here. And I'm going to let him expand on that in a second. Billy, welcome to the call.
Well, thank you, Mark. Glad to be here. And we'll start off by giving you some of my design philosophy. You know, if somebody says they like or dislike a golf course or a golf hole, it's typically all about one of three elements. And those are strategy, aesthetics, and conditioning. And if you think about the human anatomy a little bit with this, the strategy is the bones of the golf course, and it includes things like routing and how hazards are set up, how bunkers and water streams and things like that affect the golf shots. The aesthetics is the flesh of the golf course, and that's all about the natural aesthetics, which you have fabulous natural aesthetics on your property. The topography there, the water that comes into play, trees, and then man-made aesthetics is all about greens, tees, bunkers, and how mounding, how all of those things work to create aesthetics above the ground. And finally is conditioning. And quite honestly, conditioning really drives the cost because most of it is underground, whether it's drainage, soil types, irrigation. All of those things affect how well the superintendent can perform with the turf. So all of those things are things to think about as we go through this process.
So if I could ask you, I'm going to show a picture of number 11. So this is what number 11 looked like when you arrived on site for the first time to see what we were dealing with. Tell me a little bit about what you thought on number 11 when you got here.
Well, 11 is a great example of what we're going to talk about on these other 5 holes. Notice that the old 11 green, it's perched 6 or 7 feet above the creek level or the creek bank and very perched. So you have a small green, it has a lot of slope in it. And even though you're hitting a wedge or 9-iron or an 8-iron to it, it is a really difficult shot to hold the green on. Fortunately, there was a great deal of yardage behind this green. And we were able to look at pushing this green away from the water, which also then made it into what could be played as a drivable par 4, depending on which tee you play from, because at the position of the green now, the chances of going for that green are just almost impossible. You're going to end up in a lot of trouble. So Mark, if you'll go to the next one. So this was a rendering we did of what the new hole could look like. And we pushed it away from the creek. It's down at a very gentle slope going up to it from the approach. The bunkers are there to decorate it and to challenge you. Because if you pull it into the bunkers to the back left or behind the green, there's a little swale. Think 13 at Augusta National. This has some of the same type of strategy, just not as drastic a swale behind the green. It's more shallow. But those bunkers also protect 12 tees for any long shots. So now we've got a drivable par 4 if we want it. And this is what we built. The angle of this picture is a little bit different than the one that I used for that rendering, but you can see the strategy is there. And Mark, how has that been received?
That's been great. And I'll tell you, you used the word decorate for the bunkers, which I love that term, because when members saw this hole, they went, wow, that is a beautiful golf hole. And a lot of people said, well, that's now your signature hole out there. So it went from really, honestly, in my opinion, one of the worst golf holes I've ever seen, with the way that they designed that tiny little green popped up right on the creek, to now something that was kind of more grand, as you got across the creek there, rather than one little green amongst all of this fairway and rough all around it, and really not much fairway at all, and all that open space behind it, as you said, and the cart path routed behind it. Now you look down that hill and you see those beautiful bunkers, the creek in a really nice shape, and then the fairway, the ability to land it in that fairway either on your drive, or if you hit it in the trees like I do sometimes and you have to pitch out, now you can get it across the creek and have a fair third shot in. It's been wonderfully received, and honestly all of the changes have been wonderfully received, and that's why I'm really excited as we move into the second phase. And I'm going to give you an opportunity right now. We're going to start with hole 16 to talk about that, and to be honest, looking back, it's been a couple of years since we've showed any of these drawings to members, and a lot of our members, 98%, have probably never seen those. So I'm really excited, Billy, for you to share these for the first time with our members. Let's start on 16.
Okay, let me set the stage a little bit, in that there is a common theme out there today that exists on all 5 of the holes we're about to look at. And that common theme is that the greens are perched up in the air to an extreme amount, anywhere from 6, 8, 10 feet above the approach area. And the bunkers are easily 6 or 8 feet below the putting surface. All of the ground moves away from the greens down steep slopes or into bunkers, whether you're in the approach, left, right, or behind. And to add more difficulty to it, the greens are small, and there's a limited number of pin areas. So the superintendent is very challenged to keep good turf on these, even if he had perfect conditions underneath, which he doesn't. So all of that said, good strategy is all about golfers having a challenge. We want you to be challenged, but at the same time, we want you to have fun, enjoy the game. We want you to walk off the green on any hole, and whether you made a bogey or a birdie or a double bogey, that you felt like you had a fair chance at it. So that's the philosophy we're going to talk about as we go into these new designs. So hole number 16, from the back tees, 208 yards. And as you progress forward at 180, 150, 130 some for the forward tees, this is a really long par 3. So this current green is about 4,600 square feet, which is a small green that would fit okay for number 12 at Augusta, say 145 yard from the back tee shot. Our new green is at 6,300 square feet. So we've added over 2,300 square feet to the new green. And I think you're going to really appreciate that. It's going to be challenging. This has what, if you've ever looked up the word Biarritz design, this has the characteristics. I'd encourage you to go online, but know that there's going to be 3 levels of pin areas. That front level, and then it's going to drop down maybe about 6 or 8 inches below that front level into a center level of pin area. And then it's going to move up to the top level that's probably going to be 12 to 15 inches above that center area. So depending on where the pin is, there is as much as a 3 club swing from front to middle to back in your club selection. But it's going to be a nice big green. Now, if you go online and Google Biarritz, you get the Yale Golf Club at Yale University may pop up, and some of the others that are out there. They're much more extreme. There may be 4 foot deep centered areas in the green. We're not going to do that. That's too extreme. And then you'll just notice the mounding around the green, that kind of these noses are there just sort of to define the edges. And we have lowered this green over 2 feet. So what happens is, as we lower the green, we're able to spread out the width and the size of it and make it into a fair target.
That's awesome. A lot of members have asked because they've played Black Creek, which is in Chattanooga, and it has a Barrett screen on it, but it's extreme. It's probably a 5-6 foot middle swale there. And I've said, don't worry, this one's going to be a lot less severe than that. It'll have that element, but it's not going to have sort of the little bit of the trickiness of something like that. All right, let's talk 15.
So when you stand on the tee at 15, there is today a gaping bunker 6 to 7 feet below the putting surface. There's a very small green up there. Now, this is a short par 3, so it tends to have a smaller green, and that's okay. We're going to increase the size of it slightly, but we're also not going to let it be so domed. When you have a domed putting surface, it's very difficult to hit it no matter what club you have and get it to hold. And again, all of this moves off to the left, behind, and to the right of the green. It drops down 7 or 8 feet below the putting surface. I can tell you that is the hardest golf shot to try to get up and down in. I sit here and watch some of the players during the time that we were master planning, and watching players go back and forth across the green and taking a long time to play the hole. So this new design, I moved bunkers out on the left and the right of the green and made a gentle approach. So if you hit into that approach, it's sort of a false front, but it's not going to be so difficult that you can't get up and down. You'll still, if you hit the straight shot towards the green and you come up short, you still got a really good chance at par if you can get up and down, and the up and down is not severe. The bunkers, all of my bunkers are like 3 to 4 feet below the putting surface, not 6, 7, 8, 9 feet below the putting surface. So you're going to have a fair chance to hit a decent bunker shot. This green has some 3 levels in it that sort of, as you see, curl around. So you often hear us talk about Sunday pin placement. Well, Sunday pin placement is in that back right. If the pin is there, the smart shot is to go for the middle of green. Just take my advice on that, but I'm sure you'll experiment many times to make sure I'm correct on that. So yeah, this will be a fun green. Those little shallow mounds that you see in the back of the putting surface, the putting surface is going to slightly rise as it goes back. So shots that do hit in the center of the green and they roll a little bit, they're going to slow down because of those little shallow mounds. That's what they're there for. And you see the little dotted center point in the middle section. That's what we call a muffin. Okay. It's a slight rise, that a little domed deal that sits there and it's almost imperceptible, but it affects your putts. So the pin areas are around it. And depending on which side of that you're on and which side the pin is on, you're going to have to deal with that. That's part of the challenge of making the putt or reading the putt. Well, yeah, Mark, I think it's going to be a great change in this hole.
That's great. Let me show, you did a nice rendering of the more of a perspective view of this hole versus the overview. So you can really see where those bunkers move out and sort of that gentle false front, but it's more gentle than we have right now. That's for sure.
Yes, yes. And just imagine if you move that pin over to the far right behind that right-hand bunker, that's that Sunday pin placement.
Yeah, that is a no-go. That's a red light for sure. Okay, let's talk 14. I love 14.
Yeah, 14 is a really cool hole. It's a great par 5. As you can see, again, the current design is bunkers in front of you. You know, golf originated in Scotland and the UK, and it was all about the ground game. So as you notice, these designs that I have worked on and presented, we're trying to open up the ground game in the front of the greens. So we'll eliminate the bunkers in front of the green. We got 2 little wing pot bunkers on each side. So you're out there with a wedge approaching the green. And I can tell you that this green is gonna, the only maybe easy pin is in the dead center. But when you get on the front, you're squeezed a little bit about the pot bunkers. So you got to hit a very accurate approach shot if you're going to try to challenge the front pins. When you look at the back, you notice that the arrows go off in 2 different directions, right and left. And that little little humpy looking lines there is a soft roll dividing the pin areas in the back of the green. So lots of movement, but it's going to be a really fun green to work at and get. And it's long enough. If you see, as you go to your drive, if you see the pin in the back right, you want to hug the left half of the fairway on your second shot to give you a really good angle towards it. And if you see the pin in the back left, then you want to hug the right half of the fairway on your second shot to give you a good angle at that. So that's the strategy. That, our goal as architects is we want you to think about those various lines of play. And so get used to looking at where that pin is on 14 as you get ready for your next shot.
I think you did the same sort of thing on number 6. Obviously, that green's designed very differently, but you still have to think about it after your tee shot, really where you want your second shot to be, to make sure that you got the fair approach in so that you're not on the wrong side of that middle hump. So I love the way you did that here with a very different green design.
Yeah, and we're lowering this green again. We're taking it down a couple of feet to give us more square footage. On 14, original plan was about 4,800. So we're adding 1,000 square feet at 5,800. So you're going to have more space to hit to. The bunkers are going to be in the 3 to 4 foot depth range. So when you look at bunkers at 3 to 4 foot depth, it's a comfortable depth that you can get it out. You want the ball to go up in the air. So it's going to give you a great chance to get up and down out of the bunkers. Of course, none of us like to be in sand. Sand's not easy for any of us, but these are fair bunkers. I guess that's my point.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. All right, we're going to skip 3, 4 for a second. We're going to go to number 3, the par 5.
Okay, so the current green, you see the first bunker you get to in the approach. Bunkers like that are extremely difficult strategy. If you get in that bunker, you've got one of the hardest shots. The green is elevated, again, perched up, and you're trying to hit a 40 to 50 yard bunker shot to an elevated green. So we're going to eliminate the sand, and you'll notice in that same area of my plan, we have put a little bit of a cape with grass. So we'll just call that a grassy rough area. If you hit up against it, now you're hitting out of turf and a much better chance of getting the ball on the green. There's certain, we'll call them secondary hazards that we use in architecture. That's what this is. But it's also a hazard that will allow you a much better opportunity to get out of than a bunker from that yardage. When we go to the green, this current green is 4,500 square feet. And on par 5s, it's not unusual to have a green that size if you're hitting a wedge to it. The problem is, again, it's elevated, it's domed, and it drops off steeply on every side. Just no ground game. All of these greens are great examples of what we call airball. The game, as I said, originated in Scotland as a ground game. And when it came to America in it was in the 1950s and 60s that golf started evolving from ground to airball. And if you go back into the golden era here in this country, just to educate you about it, from the late 1800s to 1950 was what we call the golden era of golf design. And it's where great Scottish strategy was brought to this country. And it started out on Long Island and went all the way to Chicago and everything in between and out to the West Coast with these designers. And they built great golf courses. And the 1960s, golf and real estate got married. And golf really became about the real estate a lot. In 2008, I tell people they got divorced. And so now it's all about the golf again. The Bandon Dunes and a lot of the courses being built today are strictly about land for golf. The beauty of your land is it's not about real estate. Unfortunately, it was just built to be very difficult. And one of the things I will tell you is that the easiest thing for an architect to do in golf architecture is make a golf hole hard. It's easy to make it hard, and you have great examples. So here we expanded the green to 5,800 square feet. We're lowering the green again a couple of feet, and We do have a bunker on the back left, and believe it or not, I'm going to call that a defensive bunker. That bunker is going to save you. If you go for that back left pin, as you see this green curls to the left, and it's a plateau back there that divided by those hashes you see going through the center of the green at an angle. So you have the lower pins in the front, and it raises up maybe 8 or 10 inches to a higher level in the back. But then if you happen to go over, we're going to catch you into sand, and you'll be glad to be in the sand versus off into the water. This green is still perched in an area where if you miss left, it's going to go to the water. Okay, that same strategy, and that's great strategy. It's just that now you're going to have a better target and a more forgiving target. You just still got to hit the shot, though. You're gonna be challenged. I promise you. Every one of these new designs are going to challenge you, and that's part of the risk reward that we want to give you. Go for certain pins, and certain pins, be smart and manage a game differently, and be happy with a 2-putt and a par or a bogey.
And I do remember one of those situations. You and I were out there, and we watched a higher handicapper hit what was an incredible shot. Really, he almost made it on his third shot. It barely crept over the back of the green and went almost to the cart path. Had an impossible up and down shot, hit it over the front edge of the green, and just wasn't having fun. So I love the way that bunker's there, that if you hit a good shot to that back left corner and you get a little unlucky and it rolls off, you're not going to go all the way down either into the water, into the mulch, or to the cart path. So I love the way you did that.
Yeah, one of the things that I would encourage your members to do is study the arrows on these greens, because when you go out there and start playing them after they've grown in, those arrows are going to apply. That means water moves on that slope in the direction, which means that your putts are going to move in that direction.
That's right. That's right. All right, and we're going to wrap it up with number 4. So I love number 4. I saved it for last because it's probably my favorite change, because I do love that classic era of design and some of those famous type of golf holes. So let's talk about number 4.
Well, number 4, the current existing situation is a 4,500 square foot green, which we are going to take to 6,000 square feet. So we're going add considerable square footage. The bunkering that guards the front of the green now is very deep, as is the one on the right. We're going to keep a little small bunker up there on the top, and it's actually going to be raised above the putting surface a little bit, and will not be a terribly difficult shot if you get in it, but it's going to make you think about how you play the shot. And then the 2 bunkers on the left, they're in the 3 to 4 foot depth range. And the putting surface, you see the arrows moving from center down, and then you see this little roll that's here. So that roll, you're going to putt up and over it. And the elevation of the area just on the other side is not too much different than the elevation going into that roll. So it's going to be a little bit of a rollover kind of deal as you putt, which are challenging to judge when you've got the putter in your hand. But so it's going to be, if the pins are on the back, it's going to be to your advantage to try to get back there. But it's a large enough green that you will feel like you can have enough room to hit short of that little roll and then just have it trickle over it into the pin zone in the back.
So this would be kind of a great example of a Redan hole, if I remember correctly. Not true Redan, because true Redan starts high on the front edge and runs hard to the back, and that's really difficult. But it definitely has that element to it. And for our members, you can see this thin red line here is the original green on this rendering. And so you can see how it's shifting a little bit to the right as well. It's getting a lot bigger. But, I love the way this bunker is here. If you have a hole location right in the front right corner, you're going to almost have to challenge that little bunker and almost play a little bank shot off of it to get it really, really close. So adds a lot of strategy as you have to all of these golf holes.
Yeah, notice where the existing bunker is. You see that Mark, you might point it out. The existing bunker is right in the middle of the approach. And, again, that just destroys any chance of fun and ground game enjoyment. So we're opening up the front of these greens to encourage the ground game. And, if you miss a shot going dead straight at the green, you're going to have a chance. It's when you miss left or right that you get more challenge to it.
Yeah. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Well, Billy, thanks so much for spending some time with us today. I'm so excited. I'm keeping our fingers crossed and knocking on a lot of wood to hope that FEMA can just stamp that final approval and get us started, because I know that all of our members and all of us here on the staff are so excited to get this started and get it completed. You know, as we think about everything we've done over the last 2 years, you know, as we get into what our true future is, you know, by the time this is all done, and this golf course for our members, you have to remember it's only 13 years old. And by the time this is all done, we'll have 12 brand new green complexes. So whether you like the other ones or not, the fact of the matter is you get almost a brand new golf course out of this renovation process. Improved bunkering, contouring, larger greens that are going to be a lot more enjoyable to play. Brand new practice putting green, which, by the way, Billy, it's great to see lots of members on that putting green, but it doesn't look like there's lots of members on that putting green because it's so big. So that's great. Additional chipping green. We converted that nursery green into a chipping green over near the Golf Performance Center. So we have another space for clinics, so we don't have to shut down the main short game area. We improved the shoreline between 2 and 17. We're going to go in and do more pond work this year. Got that great new bunker complex on 13 that Billy designed, as well as the new tee boxes there, which I think is a huge improvement. 21 total greens converted to Tiff Eagle Bermuda. And again, the reason we went and converted all those holes in the floodway this past year was just in case something happened with FEMA. Those are the best surfaces out there right now since we converted those early. And so even if we have to delay to 2023, we'll still have great putting surfaces all the way through. And you'll see, and you know what those are going to look like as we come out of renovation. And then, of course, world-class Zoysia fairways, a great routing that Billy has continued to enhance. And then all of the work Chris Markle's doing out there to improve the golf course, all of the tree removal, the pruning of the trees, the sodding of areas. Number 9 is a great example. You'll see that in another communication we have coming up where we've taken that Bermuda all the way down to the banks of the pond. So it's a really tight look now next to the new number 9 green. So we are so excited to get started. Please look for more updates in the coming weeks here. We will stay in very close contact as we finish up things with FEMA and really look forward to seeing this work get started and more than anything completed, hopefully by the time we hit fall of this year. Thanks. Hope you've enjoyed this. Look forward to seeing you soon.